Another week, another episode of Star Trek Picard. As always, I'm Al. This is the Geek in Review. So I'm going to be talking about some non-spoiler stuff first of all, before I get into anything like that. So if you haven't seen the episode, you can at least watch this bit, and if you watch the spoiler stuff as well, that's great. Just leave a like. So yeah, we're nearly there at the halfway point, and this episode packs in a lot, but it doesn't take much forward in terms of plot. We do get a lot of blanks filled in, a lot of answers with Jack and Picard and that stuff. Some decent Riker moments, if I'm honest, and as always, some great Shaw moments, and we get his backstory here. And yeah, Todd Stashwick really stands out in this episode. I know that Shaw's been a scene stealer, but pretty much every scene that he's in this episode, he completely owns it. I know I say that a lot of the humour in this show doesn't work, but I've got to say, with Shaw it does. I mean, he's not overly humorous in this episode, it's just the way that the character is, but the way that they handle him and explain things in this episode is great. There's also the same sort of moments with other characters that then also aren't paid off as well, though. And of course, we've still got a changeling on board, and yeah, all that stuff we're trying to find the changeling is sort of very John Carpenter's The Thing meets a kind of Knives Out movie vibe. Not terrible, but not brilliant. But everyone gets something to do in this episode, apart from, well, Worf and Raffi, who aren't in it. And I'm not, being a bit hyperbolic here. They don't get a single scene in this episode. Crusher also doesn't get much to do, but I'll get into that once I'm talking about the spoiler stuff. But yeah, it was unexpected that we completely cut Worf and Raffi for a week. I kept waiting for it to cut back to Metalis Prime, which doesn't show up, but it does get a mention in this episode. And we do get some more Vadic stuff as well. Not a lot, but we do learn a little bit more about her, and it also does raise some questions here. We see some new shapeshifter abilities that no one mentioned in Deep Space Nine. And also, they really use flashbacks in this episode more than any other. We get at least 3 flashback scenes, beginning, middle, and end, essentially. They're all set in the same place, but they do feel disconnected. And again, I'm going to get to that once again to the episode, which is now. So, first of all, I just want to say thanks for choosing to watch this. If you do like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. But let's get to it. So, the Titan was getting its ass whooped last week, and it's still in the nebula, and they're still on the Titan. And as I said at the start of this video, we're almost halfway through the season, so yeah, in terms of pacing, that's 3 episodes on the ship and 2 episodes where the ship's now been in peril. I know it's all the one big story, but, with what they've done with Picard Season 2 and Discovery pacing issues, not promising for me. But yeah, I said we get a few flashback scenes in this episode, and the first one is Picard and 10 Forward. No, not the 10 Forward, the Guinan's Bar 1, not the Guinan's Bar 1 on board the Enterprise. And Picard gets approached by some Starfleet cadets, and we learn that he's encountered the Hirogen? Because they bring up that, what did you do when you met these Hirogen? So, I made a joke last week that Beverly remembered her time in TNG's a little bit more dangerous, and remembered Picard as Jason Bourne a little bit more than Jean-Luc Picard. And yeah, they're really leaning into that here. I mean, it's the only time that they do it in this episode. But yeah, apparently after Nemesis, Picard was fighting off Hirogen with Worf. So, probably a comic spin-off. The first thing that happens a lot in this episode, he gives a little speech that's going to be a callback later on. And that's something that is happening with sort of regular frequency in the last 2 episodes of Picard. I know it's a setup for all the stuff, but anyway, back on the bridge of the Titan. So the ship is dead in space, and it's all very Apollo 13 situation that, they can't call for help and they can't go anywhere, but I've said that this show's got writing issues, and how they deal with the disaster is one of them. I'm going to break it down later on in the episode. You'll notice a theme, let's put it that way. And also, remember, the nebula's alive or something, whatever. But I do like to see Riker in command, because we've never actually seen live action Captain Riker until now. And I like it. He listens to what his crew's got to say before he makes his decision. He's perfectly measured. Give me more of that. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, the ship's getting struck by these weird energy waves that's coming from the nebula. So danger, that's going to be a plot point later on in the episode. And then Riker goes to Picard to fill him in, and Picard sort of tries to apologise, but Riker shuts him down and just fills him in on the current situation. and then admits that he was wrong. So, yeah, he mentions about the whole fear of loss thing of his son and that he's really lost faith. He says that basically after all the years in space and stuff that he's seen, there's been nothing that's convinced him that there's more or something bigger out there. So, yeah, let's stop that for a second. So, he's met Q, he's met the Traveller, he's met Guinan. He probably knows what happened to Picard during the Tapestry episode. So, yeah, not great writing here. And in the way that they sort of give Riker his faith back in this episode does highlight that he's completely forgotten about all this amazing stuff that he's seen during whatever the 10 years that he was on the Enterprise. But yeah, again, going back to the writing, but I don't want to dwell on it just now. But one bit of writing I did like in this episode is when they explain the rift between Riker and Troi, because after the death of his son, Riker went a bit emotionally numb, and obviously Troi can sense emotion, so not getting anything off her husband, she's going to feel what he feels, or in this case, feel what he doesn't feel because he's numb. I did wonder how they were going to explain this whole Riker-Troi thing, and yeah, they paid it off pretty well. That actually made sense. I was really surprised at the logic and everything that was used there, because, as always, I'm going to hit pretty hard on the logic and the writing in this episode, but that's for later on. And this is even before the titles rolled, so yeah, they're packing a lot in already. And remember, there's a changeling on board, so Seven is on the hunt, and this falls back on the logic problems again. She's just running around the ship on her own looking for a changeling. I mean, there's no crew anywhere and there's no one watching her back, so what's to stop the changeling if she runs into it just killing her and replacing her? And they kind of do play into this a little bit about who's the changeling and who might be the changeling if you keep your eye on the way that characters say things and the way that the editing's done. It is designed to keep the mystery hanging, which I'll be honest, I liked. But I did make a video last week about a traitor on the Titan, and obviously it was the changeling, and the great Riker moment with Troi and the logic was then brought back down to earth with a lack of common sense moment. But yet the logic problems creep back in because Riker wants to keep the fact that there's a dangerous murderer changeling that could be anyone on board a secret. But he does mention a few points that I've mentioned in previous videos, and he decides to let Seven look for it on her own. So again, come on, what if the changeling was Riker in this scene? So Seven getting Shaw to help, yep, great logic, worked for me, and I'm always a fan of Shaw. And Shaw does Columbo how to find the changeling, and he does have a plan as well, and this great moment was again brought down by his plan, which is to steal the changeling's pot. Yep, that's what I said. So the pot that Odo used to regenerate in, apparently every changeling needs one. That was just never mentioned before anywhere in Deep Space Nine. So they want to find it to help locate the changeling, and I really thought that they were doing something interesting with Shaw here in this moment, but they don't. They save it for later on in the episode. But yeah, the whole plan on how to locate the changeling, for me, was a bit of a letdown. Because there was a real opportunity to build tension and a threat, and they just reduce it to 7 of 9 looking for a jar. And the changeling does try and stop her and attacks her to try and get it back, but after she shoots him once, she hesitates a few times and just lets him get away. Whereas last week, Worf killed his changeling in about 2 seconds. Writing issues, logic issues, plot issues, whatever you want to call it, it's here. Anyway, Picard takes Jack to 10 forward on the holodeck. Not the TNG 10 forward, the old dark bar from Season 2. And Picard says the bar is significant for him, but why? If you're going to 10 forward, it would surely be the one on the ship that you loved, not this dark boozer that no one's mentioned until Season 2. And also, another logic problem, the booze that they're drinking is holographic, so they're not really drinking. And another one is the holodeck has its own power supply in case of emergencies. Even Jack flat out points out how stupid that idea is, so I don't have to, but, you know, I just kind of did. Even less sense than that, we find out that Jack is no older than 24, and this guy does look a little older than that. I know he's been on the run, but man, it must have been a hard knock life if the guy is looking that way. But Jack does mention that he's visited Metalis Prime, so you know, tie into Raffi, even though she's not in this episode. But yeah, it's finally the father and son scene that we've been waiting a few episodes for, and Jack does mention how weird his own name is, because everyone keeps saying it. It's really weird that his name is after her first dead husband. Yeah, we get another backstory and another logic problem when we find out what happened to the original Jack Crusher, the shuttle accident. Picard says that they were basically hit by a storm and it took them 10 hours to get back to the ship after the shuttle they were in were damaged. He also says that they worked together to make it back, so Jack was alive after the accident and he made it back to the Stargazer. So what killed him? And then there's a bit where Shaw sort of drops in on this, and it's designed to make you think that Shaw's the changeling, and I'll be honest, they almost got me here for a second. But then we get the amazing Shaw backstory, and this is the highlight of the episode for me. So we find out that he has met Picard before at Wolf359, and yeah, a lot of fans online thought this was going to be the case, and you were right, I wasn't too sure, I was on the fence about that one. And he was on board the USS Constance and just a very junior officer, and once the ship was attacked and basically destroyed, he was in a Titanic situation with too many people and not enough lifeboats. So the Vadic issues that she mentioned in Season 2 are survivor guilt, and it explains the Picard and the Seven sort of hatred as well. But then he drops in something that you might not have noticed. He says that the real Borg are still out there. So, what does that mean for the end of Season 2? That's for another video. But yeah, I liked that we're getting this backstory from Shaw, and I like that it also ties into Picard and the TNG backstory. And the great part about this scene is, Picard just has to sit there and take it, and that's exactly what he does. And I keep saying it every week, but Shaw is 100% right, at least from his point of view from that day in his life. Picard swept in, killed thousands of people, wanted to destroy humanity, and this guy has been dealing with it for the last 30 years. So what about Beverly? Yeah, she doesn't get much to do apart from counting the space waves that are hitting the ship from the nebula, and she's worked out they're like contractions, because again, the nebula's alive, so the Picard family, Beverly, Jack, and obviously Picard, come up with an idea to ride the waves out of the nebula. So plan to escape. But Picard needs Shaw, and yeah, the way that he spoke to him here, not great. The good Picard writing, I think, is certainly out the window.
Despite the fact that you are indeed a dipshit.
But he needs him for the plans within the nacelles, so Shaw has to climb into a nacelle tube and die, probably. It seemed like this was going to be the whole Genesis bomb and the nebula thing, and Shaw's Spock at the Warp Core, but it doesn't really pan out that way. Him and Seven go to do this plan within the nacelles, and then Changeling LaForge shows up. No, not Geordie, her. And it's obvious that it's not her, so yeah, they didn't really try too hard with this. So obvious that Seven gets the drop on her. I mean, the obviousness was making her oblivious to what was going on. Not the best ending. A little bit of tension earlier on in the episode was done better than this. Kind of disappointed, if I'm being honest. But speaking of the Changelings, a lot of questions around Vadic, and she is in it this week, but again, she doesn't get much to do after a pretty solid intro. And we find out that she's a Changeling as well, with the power to communicate with the Great Link, or at least one other, or other Changelings. And we've never seen this before, so they're adding Changeling powers, like sort of the Force. And I've got a few questions about this, not just about the fact that they're putting it in, but was this one Changeling she was talking to? Was it several? Was it a link? Was it the Great Link? Also, it seems that she's at the bottom of the pile if it is the Great Link, because she's taking orders, and we've never really seen that from Changelings before. We've seen them talk and have discussions, but it seems that there's a definite hierarchy to this Changeling rebellion, so that is kind of interesting, maybe, if that's your thing. But yeah, some huge changes to Changelings, or at least Changeling lore, so how do you feel about that? Let me know in the comments below. But back on the bridge of the Titan, Picard is back in the chair after Riker gives up command. And this is where a huge other writing issue pops in, because throughout the episode they keep mentioning that they've got no power to transfer anywhere, but now they have. Enough to get out, it seems, but they've still not got all that much power because they have to transfer everything from life support, which was about to run out anyway. And life support is linked to the ship's lights, apparently, so the show that fans have been complaining is too dark to watch is now too dark to watch. But the plan works, they ride the wave out, and then Riker uses a callback asteroid to throw at Vadic with a tractor beam, even though, again, apparently there's no power. But I did like the callback to the Helios thing from the earlier episode. And this is where the episode really drops down, because when they get out the nebula, or they're close to it, the nebula gives birth to, of course, space babies. And it was very the abyss and life finds a way moment, I suppose. And if that's your thing, that's fine, but it's certainly not mine. And we didn't really need this, and it isn't a great sign when it comes to writing or pacing that they've got time to fit this in. But the episode sort of ends on another flashback-ish, where we see Picard in 10 Forward again, and someone asks him about his life outside Starfleet, and it turns out it's Jack Crusher, sort of in disguise, well, the Marvel disguise of a baseball cap. Picard tells his son, without knowing his son, that Starfleet was the only family he ever needed. So yeah, an episode full of flashbacks, and this was the last one, but why did this suddenly dawn on Picard just now? Was this the reason that we got all the other 10 Forward flashbacks just to set this up? I kind of think so, because if they'd done this on its own at the end of the episode, it would have felt a little weird and disjointed, so they had to put the others in to set it up. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this, really. There was no significant payoff. They're not getting on that much, so why would this then add to that? But I tell you who are talking, it's Riker and Troy, because Space Babies inspired Riker and gave him hope again that there was more out there in the universe. So Cure Guinan didn't really do anything for this guy for all the time that he spent with him. So not the greatest use of Riker's character or the writing here towards the end of the episode. And it finally ends with Jack having more visions. So, is he a changeling or is he linked to the Great Link? Probably. That seems to be the way it's going. Maybe this is going to be something to do with changeling evolution. I think that might come into it somehow, but we're going to have to wait and see. I really hope that he's not becoming a changeling, but man, it really looks that way. So yeah, a lot of character stuff in this episode and not a lot of plot or movement or any really movement because they're just finally out of the nebula and sort of on the run. But where to next and what's going on with Jack? I keep saying it, but I do think the show has fallen back into the pacing issue, and I'm interested to see where they're going to go next and if the pace of the episode is going to pick up now they're in open space. Not a terrible episode, a lot better than last week, a lot of great character moments, a lot of bad character moments, and I keep saying I love all the Shaw stuff, and for the moment he's still alive, but the space baby thing is very Picard Season 1 or Discovery, and as you can probably tell, I'm not a fan. But the episode did feel a bit more balanced, with Riker, Jack and Seven and Shaw all getting stuff to do, along with seeing the bridge crew work together. Beverly was sidelined and Worf and Raffi were written out. Now, maybe this is a sign that they don't know what to do with all these characters if they're not featuring them in every episode. I'm not saying that everyone needs to have something to do, but not having two main characters in one episode felt a little bit weird to me, and I wonder if they're going to do it again. Also wonder if next week then we're going to get more Worf and Raffi than we usually do per episode. Also some retconning in this week, again with the addition of the changeling powers, which is probably going to upset some people. I think it was pretty cool, but yeah, if they start doing it once, they could probably do it again, and then you just make your enemy overpowered and kind of lose whatever threat they are. So I hope they don't add too much into the changeling lore other than what these guys have been up to for the last 20 or 30 years. But while not a great episode, certainly a good one, I'm still enjoying this show. I am worried about what's going to happen with the pacing and everything in the next few weeks, and what the next stage of the story is going to be, because we've still got Geordi and lore to come. Now, I'm going to be doing more videos on this because I've got quite a lot of theories about what's going to happen next and also what happened in this episode. So if you made it this far, please leave a like in the video and subscribe to the channel and turn notifications on so you don't miss it. As always, I want to know what you thought, so let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me on Twitter @TheGeeksReviews. And I've been Al, thanks for watching.